earlier, the institutions are not as allocated as they want and need to be, especially to this AI move, as you and Jordy do a great job of spelling out. This is the biggest thing going on right now. And to look at something like subprime car loans and think that's going to destroy the market when you literally have trillions of AI investment going on, subprime car loans, they're just not the same thing as housing in 2008, no matter how much the doom and gloomers want them to be. So I think what we're doing is we're working our wall of worry. We're getting through a consolidation period. We have this volatility ahead of all these big events that I listed, like the Xi-Trump meeting, et cetera. And once we get past that, it's the long-term narrative that I have says, we move to the top of our up channels. And the thing that's farthest from the top of its up channel for me is Bitcoin right now.
Well, guys. The Bears are not looking so great right now. Not ready to do a victory lap quite yet. But, guys, things are coming together. This is the biggest week I think we've had in a long, long time. Dark Wolves, appreciate the retweet. Guys, this is the biggest week we've had in a long time. I went through last week a list of catalysts that were coming up. We're going to go through that. We're going to break down how they're all interconnected, how this could play out. That interview I just played a clip from, watched over the weekend. Really good alpha in there, some really good information. There's another clip I'm going to play later from that interview. Helium, the great decoupling, as we were talking about. I don't know if y'all are paying attention to the price action right now, but damn, guys, it is looking pretty good. When alt season, we're going to talk about that too. We're going to talk about some charts, some correlations, when we could start seeing things really move here. And I think it could happen pretty quickly. So very exciting. You want to get your Harley? Yeah, man. Oh, man. I think it's coming, guys. I really do. Let's talk about some of the catalysts, though. There's a lot of stuff in the crypto news. I'm also going to break down a move in the traditional stock market. I took a pretty sizable position in one of my retirement accounts that's linked to blockchain technology and real estate. So we're going to talk about that too. In particular, though, here's the list that we were breaking down last week, and we're gonna get into the nitty-gritty details, all the stuff that's taking place. Actually, you know what? Let's go to this side over here instead. We are going to talk about the things that are happening this week. Number one on the list, that's tomorrow, guys, the FOMC rate cuts. Will quantitative tightening end in conjunction? And that right now is the overall consensus. We look at the report here. Right now, it's expected that there will be a quarter-point cut. They're also expected to be announcing the end of quantitative tightening. So that would be a massive move. And obviously, I think the markets are already starting to bake this into an extent. And it does say here that one of the Federal Reserve members is expected to dissent and push for a 50 basis point cut. So let's break down the details on all this. So let's see. So let's break into this article here. It talks about how Jerome Powell spoke. This is just a recent article about they're going to be ending the campaign to shrink its $6.6 trillion balance sheet. They used saying that it could happen in months. And the reports coming out of the last 2 weeks has been that it's expected he's going to change his stance on this and announce that it's going to be ending tomorrow. It does talk here about how since mid-2022, the bank has allowed securities to mature without replacement, resulting in a reduction of $2.4 trillion in their holdings. And you can see this right here, guys. If you go to the Federal Reserve website, it's exactly what we see as far as their balance sheet goes. So we got up to right around almost $9 trillion. We've seen a runoff now of that $2.6 trillion that they're talking about there, and leaving the $6.6 trillion. That's exactly what they're talking about in this article here. So, $2.4 trillion runoff, and the $6.6 trillion balance that's left. The other thing, though, that I think we need to cover, we've talked about a couple of times, is this reverse repo market. And that is a way that they did pull liquidity out of the markets. That got up to over $2.5 trillion So they've been pushing this liquidity back into the markets now for the last couple of years. That is pretty much dissipated, guys. This lever is gone. So not surprising that now all of a sudden they're like, yeah, we're going to end QT and potentially start using QE here because they can't continue to push liquidity into the markets using this lever. So I would expect that will be the case tomorrow. Polymarket saying that we're going to see a quarter point cut. That's what's expected. That is what's being baked into markets largely at this point. I thought this was an interesting bet, though, to take. How many will dissent at the next Fed meeting? As it said, there is an expectation that one will dissent. 68%. So not a bad one to put a bet on, in my opinion, potentially. If you look, again, this is the expectation that this guy is going to dissent. I did go ahead and looked at his X account just to see. He's got a lot of posts about how he thinks that inflation is not as bad as what they're stating, which would lead me to believe he could push for maybe a 50 basis point cut. So this is the guy right here. Obviously, at 68%. It's not bad odds, and it does seem like pretty likely that he could dissent. Of course, back in July, if you remember, we did see 2 of the governor's dissent. And it was kind of unprecedented. You don't normally see that, but we didn't cut it at all in that session. They were pushing for a cut. So, having one this time around, I wouldn't be super shocked. So that, of course, is the first catalyst, guys. The next 3 here, 2, 3, and 4, all are interlocked with each other. And I'm going to break down the details here because it is kind of crazy how everything is interconnected. But what's cool is all of this is going to be happening this week. So the first 4 really, I think we're going to see major movement, at least the first 3 for sure. I think 4 will come shortly after. And it actually, if you play, there's the clip here I'm going to play from Besson in a second that kind of touches on all the stuff that we've been talking about. It's like, hey, so we are right in pulling all this stuff together. So here it says in this article this morning that U.S. stock futures rose Sunday after U.S. and Chinese representatives over the course of the week and agreed a framework for a deal, potentially averting a tariff hike. And it says, as investors expect another interest rate cut from the Fed Reserve. Again, Trump is meeting with Xi on Thursday. So that's coming up. So tomorrow's FOMC Thursday is the meeting between Trump and Xi. Let me reshare this so that I can get the audio on this because for whatever reason, I lost it. Okay, let me pull this up. So I want to play this part of this clip from Bessent here. He talks about everything we've been talking about. Oh, the audio is not coming through again. Hold on. Let me reshare again. I don't know what's going on with my connection here. Come on, StreamYard. I hope that Streamer TV gets a better option for me to stream from. I would love to start using them. All right, here we go.
Leverage with the threat of the 100% tariffs on November 1st. And I believe we've reached a very substantial framework that will avoid that and allow us to discuss many other things with the Chinese. I think we will be able to discuss them helping us get this terrible fentanyl crisis under control. I think we are going to be able to discuss substantial soybean and ag purchases for our American farmers.
So how about that? So first off, you said fentanyl. I mean, there have been reports for years that a lot of the precursors, or at least for fentanyl, have been coming from China and coming up through the southern border. So that's not surprising. And then he mentioned soybeans directly. This is something that we've been talking about a lot over the last couple of weeks, how China stopped buying soybeans back in May. Argentina has been kind of undercutting us and selling to China. So that's going to be a big part of these negotiations. Also worth noting, Besson has $40 million invested in soybean farms. So he certainly wants to get that done.
I think we are going to be able to discuss more balanced trade. And I'm not going to get ahead of the 2 leaders, but I think that they will also be discussing President Trump's global peace plan that he's been so successful at, both here in Asia, the Middle East, and now he's looking to Ukraine, Russia.
Mr. Secretary.
Aha, and there it is. There it is. So Ukraine, Russia, he mentions it directly right there. So How does this all overlap? Well, if we go back to this tab here, we got the China tensions easing. So that's on Thursday. They're going to have soybeans as part of that. Obviously, that overlaps to Argentina. I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. And then with Ukraine and Russia, there's a couple of things that overlaps with. So we'll talk about that too. So looking at Argentina, the election, right? This was yesterday. So it says Milei did win, did indeed win. Obviously, there have been negotiations ongoing with Trump and Milei over there. I think part of that is, hey, stop selling soybeans to China. And I think we're going to get China to start buying soybeans again. I would expect that will be part of the announcement coming out of whatever negotiations take place. The other thing, though, we put these sanctions on Russia's two biggest oil producers last week. And a big part of that, all of that, basically China and India have been the big purchasers. Well, that's by far and large Russia's biggest export. So if we can cut off oil sales, we get the China and India to stop buying oil from Russia, that really makes things difficult on Russia. Argentina has a fair amount of oil, so could that also be part of the negotiation here, that we can have them backstop by increasing oil production so that we can get them, China and India to stop buying from Russia? So those would be two things that overlap there, obviously. The other thing, though, has to do with the rare earth minerals. And something that's been coming up a lot is this question around, will we supply these Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine? And one of the things that people need to realize with these Tomahawk missiles is that this rare earth element is really, really important to manufacturing these Tomahawk missiles. And it just so happens that China also has about 90% market share. So basically a monopoly over that specific rare earth mineral. And, that's going to be a big part of these negotiations as well. So obviously that's another thing that overlaps with the Ukraine-Russia peace discussion. So a lot of this, guys, when you think about, these really 2, 3, and 4 on this list, all of this, at least 2 and 3, should be coming to a close here over the next week. And I think that we could see Ukraine-Russia follow suit shortly thereafter. So those are all obviously massive, guys. All 4 of these. Again, tomorrow, FOMC. What does Jerome Powell say? Does he indeed NQT? What happens with China? Do our soybean farmers get their sales back up and running? Do we get them to stop buying oil? And can we get this, Ukraine-Russia peace deal in place? All of those would be absolutely huge catalysts for markets. The next thing on the list, of course, is the government shutdown. And this is super important. Obviously, it's starting to have its impact on markets for sure. Obviously, it sucks too that there's a lot of people that aren't getting paid, guys. So, from a humanitarian aspect, yeah, of course. I mean, I try to focus on the market stuff because that's what this channel's about, guys, is the market. But as far as the government shutdown, that has an impact on the Solana spot ETFs getting approved. So we did see this. The SEC did approve this 21 share Solana spot ETF. So this just took place. There's talks now. Hey, are we going to see the new all-time highs? We've been talking about that, right? We thought that the spot ETFs would come in October. Obviously, we haven't seen them launch yet because of the government shutdown. So maybe the timeline's pushed out slightly. But you think about the money that's going to be coming in. This is big news. It does say that it can't get fully launched until, while the government shut down. We do have another announcement here, though. This just came today. New York Stock Exchange also did give an approval for the Bitwise Solana staking ETF. But again, that's another one that has to get final approval. If you see here in this article, needs final approval from the SEC before it can get launched. So we should see a huge influx of spot ETFs coming shortly. Again, a lot of that is tied to the government shutdown. So that's just another catalyst to add to the list, obviously. The last ones on this list, let's pull up. So we have another rate cut coming on December 9th. It's not that far out, y'all. That's only a month and a half away, really. Solana Breakpoint is the day after the rate cuts there. So December 10th. That always leads to some serious rallies across projects in the Solana ecosystem. Obviously, we have a huge influx of deep end projects that are doing some big things there. And then the market structure bill, I covered that last week, but Brian Armstrong with Coinbase said we're 90% of the way there. They're hopeful they could even get it on the president's desk by Thanksgiving. So to get approved this year. So a lot happening over the next 6 weeks. A lot of that is happening, really half of these happening in the next week. So guys, there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic on the macro side of things for sure. And a lot of reason to be optimistic about where the market's heading. Obviously, we're seeing it with some of the price action so far. I do, before we get really into the weeds on the crypto side of things, I do want to cover one investment that I've added to. It's in the real estate market, and it is a publicly traded company, and it's Opendoor. There's a lot of catalysts taking place. I did add a position here to Opendoor. They just appointed a new CEO. They also have this guy that just rejoined their board. He was an early stage investor, startup investor in PayPal, LinkedIn, Slide, and Square. He's talking about removing some headcount to get their margins up at Opendoor. Of course, they did just appoint that new CEO. By the way, they're not the only ones. Should have mentioned this too. Amazon announced today they're laying off 30,000 people. It's about 1% of their workforce, so not a huge percentage, but still, we're starting to see more announcements like that. But that's something that Opendoor is looking to do too here. Likely cut down on their number of staff to get some profitability up. Here's their new CEO, okay, that was appointed, and I thought this was kind of wild after digging in a little bit. So the new CEO is looking to allegedly, okay, these are the reports that are starting to emerge. They're looking to tokenize real estate. And the Opendoor CEO retweeted Vlad from Robinhood, retweeted his tweet about real estate being tokenized. And then you also have him retweeting this tokenization. This is from the Robinhood CEO. Tokenization will eat the entire financial system. Talking about real estate, and it does appear that the new Hood CEO has been pretty active on those posts. So it would lead you to believe maybe there would be a collab between Opendoor and Robinhood, but it definitely would lead you to believe that they are looking to get into tokenization of real estate. And that, I think, could be very, very bullish for the stock, especially after the changing of the guard there and trying to, get the company a little bit more lean. You also have mortgage rates coming down, which should increase some movement in the real estate market. And then you have Mike Alfred, okay, who announced recently that he's become a really big investor in this company. Now, I invested in Iron because of him. Sold too early. I doubled up my money. I should have held because he started tweeting about that at $8. It's almost at $70 today in a course of 6 months. Okay, so he's had some really good calls, and that is the main reason I started looking at this. But you look at all the catalysts that are lining up for this company, Opendoor. I think it could continue to move. Price prediction from him right now, he's targeting $37, which is kind of wild considering it's at $8 right now, guys. If we look at it right now, it's $8.14. I got in below 8 on this one. There's a lot of people saying, if you look at the max here, obviously it used to be much higher. But this is one that a lot of people are looking at the charts, looking at the catalysts that are lining up, has some overlay with blockchain technology potentially. And I think there's a dip at the end of last week. And an update on that. This had to do with the tariff threat on Canada. If you guys remember, I opened up the last show with that Ronald Reagan ad. Says that they're now pulling that ad up in Canada after Trump threatened to increase tariffs and stop negotiations with them. Did still air on Friday and Saturday in the World Series games, which I guess pissed off Trump, and he said that he's going to put 10% tariff on Canadian goods. But I think it's interconnected with a little bit of a pullback we saw at the end of last week here because the tariffs, I think, spooked markets when it comes to the real estate and some of the materials you need for housing. But obviously, I think that's going to end up being, not a big deal. Basically, I think the markets largely overlooked that and not too concerned about it. So that is one. We don't cover a lot of stocks. We normally focus on crypto, but this is one that I did add a substantial position to just because I think there's some overlap there. All right. Well, let's talk about crypto, guys. That's the fun part, right? We saw this big move in gold recently. We saw a massive amount of buying. You see central banks have been adding to their gold positions. We saw gold get up over $30 trillion market cap. And we've since seen a little bit of a pullback here. This actually, it doesn't seem like a big pullback when you consider the market cap, though. That's like a $3 trillion pullback in gold. And there's been a lot of people now that are saying, hey, this is going to end up being a rotation into Bitcoin. And I want to play this clip because they talk about just that.
Place to start the conversation. Gold has been on this historic run, one of the best years in like 40 or 50 years. We now are starting to hear rumblings of a gold to Bitcoin rotation. Do you think it's going to happen or not?
I think it's going to happen. I think it's starting this week. I think in the medium to longer term, let's call it 3 to 6 months, I'm very confident, high level of probability that this is beginning now. Do I think there's always a potential? One more little flush out, shake out some weak hands, a little dip in the Bitcoin price, maybe all the way to the 98 level is possible. If it happens, I think it's 1-2 days back to 108, and then we're on our way to 140, 150 by the end of January. And to flesh out what I see happening here really is people need to just take a step back and really look at where we were just a year ago, right? So a year ago, before the election, the Bitcoin price somewhere in the 50s, okay?
And that it's kind of crazy to think about that. Like, it was not that long ago. It was just last August we were in the 50s. I think we forget that. It's the recency bias. We're like, oh my God, we just dumped to 100K. It's like, shit, man. We just over a year ago, we were literally at 50K before the big run up at the end of last year. I mean, we've been consolidating now, but like, it is important to zoom out and remember those things sometimes.
And literally in the 3 months after the election, it went up over 50% and gold went up 2%. So it shouldn't be surprising to people that after a move like that, basically from 50s to 108, that we were going to spend some time, consolidating, shaking out weak hands, making sure these price levels make sense. And I think right now we're at a key price level, which is that 108 level. This was that first breakout high that we got to at the end of last year and in January. And so we're just confirming that's where we want to be. Could we do a quick slip? 98 was something we hit around the time the United States bombed Iran. Check down to that level for a day or two and then come right back up, sure. But when you look at the longer term price channels, we are right now in the lower bands of those channels, and the upper bands, like I say, are pointing to 140, 150 by the end of January.
Boom. Okay. 140, 150 by the end of January. Of course, this is before this most recent rally. Now sitting at $114,000, almost just under 115. So he's saying it's not out of the question to drop to 98 before we move back up. But again, by the end of January, he's thinking 140 to 150. I would not at all be surprised if that's the case either. And you think about all the catalysts that we already talked about coming up. And add this to the list, potentially, depends on how you look at it, but Mt. Gox sent out this notification that they're delaying their repayments from October 31st of this year till October 31st of 2026. Okay, so why is that important? Well, they're sitting on, for redistribution, around $4 billion of Bitcoin. It's likely that this would have caused a lot of selling pressure. Now, it wouldn't have been the end of the world. In fact, in that interview, I highly recommend actually watching the whole thing. He talks about how we've seen all this consolidation for a year and the changing of some old large holders changing hands and really getting spread out amongst more holders. There was one that Galaxy Digital had in their most recent financial report. 80,000 Bitcoin was sold. That, if you guys remember, not that long ago, a couple months ago, an old OG holder, 80,000 Bitcoin Okay. So we've seen some of this recently, some really large holders that, let's be real. I mean, they held all the way up to this point. That guy had got $8 billion. Like, people are like, why are they selling? He's like, well, he's going to go right off into the sunset. $8 billion is a lot of money. And really, in the long term for Bitcoin, that's a good thing. If you can get some of those OG whales to sell their bags and for that to be spread out and really diversify and get more decentralized holders, that's good for the long-term health of Bitcoin. And I think we've seen a lot of that happening really over the course of this year. We're still holding the price though around 114, 115. I think the next big move is coming. So good things ahead, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinion, really. Market dominance sitting at just below 60%. The big thing as far as alts go, we've been talking about this a lot. The Russell 2000, I think, is going to be really important. I'm going to show some correlation with and one of the altcoin charts here specifically here in a minute. But this is really your smaller caps in the stock market. We've seen largely over the last couple of years, the Mag 7, your really big stocks have grown and kind of held up the market. We haven't seen as much risk appetite. We're starting to see this now, as quantitative tightening is expecting to end, as we are expecting more rate cuts coming, as we're getting things kind of worked out with the tariff situation. I think when the tariffs were officially announced earlier this year, I think a lot of people got risk off. We're starting to see this transition now into smaller and mid-sized caps that is really good for crypto and for altcoins especially. There's a really strong correlation with Ethereum. Ethereum now up over $4,200. So love to see that. I think the big level that most people are looking out for with Ethereum is if it can break above 5,000, that's when a lot of people think that a full-blown alt season will take place. We have Solana sitting around 200, so just below right now. I'm not worried about it, guys. I mean, the spot ETFs are coming. We see plenty of catalysts. Coming. There we go. I went to full screen there for a minute. Plenty of catalysts coming for Solana. So I think that there's plenty of bright times ahead. Also, I saw this post from one of their official accounts. If where all the talk, people are like, well, Solana goes down all the time. Guys, it's been 21 months, almost 2 years since we've seen a major Solana outage. It actually held up, in that recent, AWS situation, where a lot of Ethereum had issues, actually, some layer 2. So, guys, it has been quite a while since we've seen any downtime with Solana. Look at Chris Bagnell in the house. How you doing, sir? Got to meet Chris when we were out in Vegas earlier this year, man. Hopefully all is well. And a couple of other, overarching things with crypto. We're continuing to see more institutional interest. Brian Armstrong with Coinbase just made this announcement today that they're collaborating with Citibank. Okay, and we know Citibank's been getting into the crypto space, but this is an official collaboration with Coinbase. And then, y'all, when you start seeing this type of stuff, Western Union is getting into stablecoin integration, and people are fucking bearish right now. Like, what? So crazy to me. It says that their CEO said they're actively piloting stablecoin settlement rails. The move is intended to reduce dependency on legacy correspondent banking systems. Many are now taking the approach, if you can't beat them, join them, okay? Because they have to at this point. They have to pivot. And the CEO went on to say, in many parts of the world, being able to hold a U.S. dollar-denominated asset has real value, as inflation and currency devaluation of their own currencies can rapidly erode an individual's purchasing power. This goes to show how genius this move was by the U.S. to really solidify the U.S. dollar, in this next chapter of the financial rails globally. This was such a big move. It says here, Swift is building its own blockchain platform. Visa and MasterCard are racing to integrate crypto payments. Major banks around the world are developing proprietary stablecoin and tokenized deposit systems. Of course, this really happened starting with the Genius Act from the U.S., and it's led this race. It says Bank of America, Citigroup, JP Morgan, etc. Says banks in South Korea, Japan, and the EU are now turning their attention to domestic currency. So they're going to have to follow suit. And we are just getting started, y'all. I think a lot of times we get kind of consumed with what's happening in the U.S. And it makes sense. The U.S. is the biggest market, but dude, this is a global movement, y'all. You have to look at this and how big this is going to be. It's not just the US. This is everywhere. The amount of money that's going to be flowing in is absolutely insane. You see a Solana card. I did. I covered the Gemini Solana card last week and Cadena. Yeah. Well, it's unfortunate, man. You're going to see more and more, of these larger crypto projects. Unfortunately, at some point they fail. I think a lot of the L1s, probably won't exist. Let's be real. We saw that in the last market cycle. A lot of L1s had crazy valuations. We saw like a lot of rotation from one to the next to the next. Most of them, I'd say the vast majority of them aren't really being used that much. If they're not generating fees, then how can you start to even try to justify some of the valuations of some of these L1s? Obviously, I think Ethereum, it will be fine. A lot of the layer 2s, Base is getting a lot of movement right now, especially in virtuals. We'll talk about that more in a minute. But Solana, of course, we're about to have a huge influx of capital from institutions into Solana. I think AVAX is another one, obviously, that y'all know by now I have investment in, I have my eyes on. So let's talk about alt season. Okay, Ted has been pretty spot on with a lot of his analysis recently. So we like to bring up this post. He's talking about the altcoin market cap, excluding ETH and stablecoins, is what he's looking at here. And this is the chart right here. And actually, I did pull it up myself on TradingView. So, of course, this is, again, your altcoin market cap, excluding Bitcoin, Ethereum, and stablecoins. We have not even broken the all-time high from the last market cycle here. Okay, and so that obviously does make me very bullish. You see this huge wick down when we had that crazy China washout and Binance or pricing oracles fucked up. But guys, we have not seen the all-time highs from the last market cycle. And you might ask, well, why is that bullish? Well, this is something that the Russell 2000 has been a leading indicator for. If you look at the last market cycle, we saw this big run up to new all-time highs for the Russell 2000 really in late 2020 into the beginning of 2021. And we saw a very similar run about a month or two after that run up in this altcoin market cap. So the Russell 2000, again, is a really good indicator that risk on appetite is increasing. Well, this is what we're seeing right now, guys. We're seeing another run up in the Russell 2000 to all-time highs. So you have to think, okay, are we going to see something similar? Generally, the Russell 2000 has led the way before alts have started to run. And I think it is something we could see, in a month, in a month or two from now, over the next, few months. I think we could see a major run up in altcoins. If this holds true again with the Russell 2000, I don't see why it wouldn't, because again, the Russell 2000 is your small and mid-sized caps. Guys, I think it's coming. It's super exciting, really. Let's look at, you said, feels like you're watching 2021 Roaring Kitty. Hell yeah, let's go. Let's go, guys. It's coming. All right. Let's talk about DePIN on the day. Demo's pushing up. Arweave's pushing up. They just changed their tokenomics a bit. Helium. Are we seeing the great decoupling when it comes to helium? This is something we've been talking about quite a bit. Guys, we're at 223. We're just going to leave this comment up here for a little bit longer, Chris. No, I was kidding. That's inappropriate, Joe. All right. Joe's like the class clown. Oh, man. All right. So helium sitting at $2.23. Guys, it is running up. I put out that video. Hey, I think that great decoupling is coming when it was about $1.80, right? It was right after their announcement that they're going to start token burns. People are like, oh, who cares? It's a stable coin, blah, 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 blah. All right. Well, we are starting to see it decouple from the other alts. So that's great news. By the way, GeoNet, I had a chance to catch up with Mike Horton over the weekend and hopped on a phone call. they're doing open market buys. So I know there's some speculation. People are like, I don't know if they're buying in the open market. They are. Since they moved to Solana, they've been doing on Gate.io, but they're about to move back to DEX buys in Burns again, and they're doing it on a regular cadence. So throughout the day, okay, so GeoNet is doing open market buys as well. For all you people questioning that out there, I was able to confirm that. But obviously, it's doing good things for Helium. They're buying on a regular daily basis now from revenue. So that is buying pressure that was not there before. That's going to be there every day. So just mathematically, it has to have an impact. Okay, even if people are selling, eventually your sellers will get exhausted. So the GeoNet is the only promising Demon project is run by boomers. Okay. Yeah. All right. I mean, you can make that argument, I suppose. I guess Mike is a boomer, but he knows his shit, man. He's not your traditional boomer. Okay. You got GeoNet. They just released this article about how this is from Blockworks, by the way, our good friend Nick over at Blockworks. So I'll just read through the highlights here, but I encourage you to check out the full report. It says that they're mapping leads usage with 4,400 RTK hours on drone mapping. Agriculture is sitting there at 24,000 hours, 98.6% accuracy. And then you have, let's see, the quality is improving. So they put out some improvement proposals around uptime and having a quality setup. So that's obviously having its impact. And this is the big one right here, I think, automotive applications. I think this is where you're going to see a lot of increase, 188,000 RTK hours. So this is, I think, where you're going to see a huge increase in the total addressable market for GeoNet, because we're starting to see this big movement now in autonomous vehicles. So it's going to be obviously very important. Protocol revenue climbing towards 5 million, up from 3 million earlier this year. So that's a big increase. They have the 80% buyback in Burns, so they are buying in the open market again. You have the monthly token emissions. This is the other thing that I don't think a lot of people talk about, but every June, their emissions are cut in half. They have a halving event every June. So that's going to happen every single year. Revenue is going to continue rising. You're going to have emissions going in the opposite direction. So to me, GeoNet is just such a no-brainer, man. They have deployments across 140 countries. They have over 20,000 base stations. They're able to really address about 90% of their addressable market at their current state. So they're not in hyper growth mode anymore. I mean, the network's essentially built out for the most part. They have some little areas that they need to get coverage in still, but they can address most of the total addressable market. And of course, TVL is stable. They're really largely moving over to Solana at this point to make them their main chain. I think it's a really smart move. So again, this is from Blockworks Research. You see Nick, our good friend, is the one that put out this report. And here is, if you want to go to the actual report, here's the full report here. So again, encourage you all to read through it. Really solid analysis by Nick. The dude's freaking smart, man. All that said, GeoNet's sitting at like 13.3 cents. Like, give me a break, man. It's so crazy to me. But again, look at the fundamentals. We talked about this forever with Helium, right? They went net deflationary. GeoNet is doing all the right things, moving into new markets. Revenue's increasing. Emissions are going to be decreasing. So, you do the math there, guys. I'd invest. What did Joe say? I'd invest in more boomer defense, but Ariel proves that boomer CEOs aren't a good strategy. Okay. Goodness gracious. Oh, man. All right. I want to play this clip from Nils over at Auki. Let's get him over here. All right. Get my audio going. Cool.
Customer today is Sweden's largest chain of grocery stores, where they, using the phones in their pocket, can go and film the store, get an AI accessible map of the store, and then as a second step, they add a barcode scanner to the phone. Now, when you have a barcode scanner on a phone that knows precisely where it is in space, you can actually start building hyper accurate maps of where the products are in the store, not according to some plan that headquarters made, but like, what does the reality really look like in the store? And when they connect that to their sales data, they can get hyper accurate heat maps of what part of the shelf is performing well, so that they can start optimizing the use of their shelf space, which is ultimately what the computer game of retail is about. You know, they need to know what products should I carry, and they have tools for that. They need to know how should I price the products, and they have tools for that. But they also need to know, where should I put the product? How much space should I give the product? What should the product be next to? And that's where Aukey steps in to help.
So Aukey, guys, they are working with some really large grocery chains. They have 7-figure contracts, and that's part of it. The tapping into the phones, but they are also now developing use cases around the VR glasses that are open source. They have some major things launching there, and then obviously with robotics, and they are already in discussions with one of the largest robotics companies in China. They're also working in conjunction with the Chinese government on certain use cases, particularly in theme parks. So they've got a lot of stuff going for them. The price, over the last week, it had pumped a lot earlier, in the summer. So I'm not surprised that we have seen it cool off a little bit. What's going on here? StreamYard is giving me some serious trouble today. Come on, StreamYard. What the hell, man? All right, here we go. So we're at 1.8, just under 1.9 cents. So kind of surprising to see, but at the same time, again, you look at over the course of the year, earlier this year, we really dropped down. We'd shot up, and I think now we're kind of consolidating again. But I would imagine, at least my expectation is that as we see alt start to pop off, I think robotics and dependent specifically, I think are going to do quite well. And Aukey is one of those, along with GeoNet, that I think is going to do extremely well. This announcement just came out. I'll dig into the details on this tomorrow. And again, I am going to be hosting the AMA later this week for HiveMapper, but they have a new staking improvement proposal that they put out today. There's been a lot of people for a long time that have been like clamoring for a staking mechanism. So I'll get through the details of that tomorrow with y'all. I haven't had a chance to read through all the documentation. I had talked to them a little bit about the potential of this, but I don't know how all the details ended up fleshing out. I saw another announcement today that Rover and GeoNet are going to be doing regular updates together moving forward. So that's good news. And let's see, a couple other things. Our good friend over at Airbnb, that is back down to when we first started covering it, around 55,000 market cap. So this thing moved up, has moved back down. What will come of it? We'll see. It did get up to, it wicked all the way up to like 130K or 115K overnight last week one day. So still consolidating in this range. Of course, this is the one where they're streaming every day. They're building a house in Brazil. Will it go viral? That's the question. If it does and it gets some traction, this thing could definitely pop off from where it's at. I think it's a unique story at least. But this one, we've been cooking on, man. This is something I covered earlier in the year, and I've covered several different times since. But the Virtuals ecosystem on Base is popping off right now. This DPEN baby is launched on Virtuals. I started covering this really around a 40,000 market cap back in late spring. I want to say like May timeframe. Sitting at a 180,000 market cap, so a 4.5x, 450% return since then. Still super low cap, and with the Virtuals ecosystem popping off, and I believe they've launched a lot of features around this around their website, doing DPEN analysis. This is one that I think could continue to run potentially, given the narrative and everything. And there's some rumors that it could be someone from the IoTeX team behind this. We'll see. It's unconfirmed, guys. But this is one that, again, if you did buy back when we talked about this in May, you've gotten a 4.5x so far. So not too shabby. We'll see where this thing goes. We'll see where it goes. Who we got in the house? Hello, sir. I think Jeffkey, I think you just if this is the same one that was with Lux. I believe he just left to work on some other things. So welcome to the stream, sir. Oh man, Chris Bagnell in the house. What did you say? You said talk about Caspa. Nah, we're not going to talk about Caspa. Not going to talk about Caspa. I don't have any investment in Caspa. Or do we have any big believers in Caspa? I don't know. Flux Daniel Keller did come out and talk about, giving some support to the Kadena community, and did not seem people were too excited about that based on the comments or some of the responses, but I don't know. I don't know what's going to go on there. But I will say, actually, I was on the Flux space this last week. After the major AWS outage, Daniel said that they did have a lot of conversations with some prospective companies, some potential customers. I think the more outages you have like that, you can kind of pounce on those opportunities for sure. People don't care about decentralization until they do. And I think largely at this point, there is an argument to be made that people don't really care that much. But I think if we continue to see outages like we've seen, especially over the last year or two, we've seen several AWS outages. If that type of stuff continues, I think you're going to see more and more people look for decentralized solutions to try to get around that, because that can be really, really rough for your business. If you have outages like that, that can absolutely cripple your business. So I think people are going to become more and more aware of other options out there. Nobody cares anything about making money. It's true. But if you have outages, you can't make money, man. There's a lot of companies that were just down and out. You can lose a lot of revenue in those times for sure. So I agree, man. Money is the driver here for sure. All right, guys. I mean, that's what I have today. I've got back home, man. Back in my normal setup here. So tomorrow we'll dig in more. We'll see what Jerome Powell says in the FOMC meeting. I think we'll see a 1/4 point cut. But we'll see. ETH validators on AWS. We saw Base have some serious downtime around that. So yeah, man. A lot of projects that aren't decentralized. There's no doubt about it. Oh, actually, I want to pull this up. The 375 AI token launch. We have pre-trading open on Mexi. Let's see here. And currently trading at pre-market trading is currently at 13.9 cents. So let me pull this up. 13.9 cents. No, we don't want to claim 20 USDT. So this thing has been pre-trading now for a few days. It did spike up. I don't know what caused that massive spike. That's kind of crazy. But someone must have put in a big order. But you see, yeah, so fully diluted valuation, I believe that would be $139 million. So I think a lot of their public token sale was right around 70 million. So that would be 7 cents fully diluted valuation. So this is maybe a look into what we could expect at TGE, which is coming up. Is that tomorrow? No, in 2 days, I think 29th. I want to say the 375 AI ETH token TGE. So kind of cool to see. There's been some serious appetite for this pre-sale. So pre-trading on Mexi. So that's a big one, y'all. Let's keep your eyes on. That's what I got. Appreciate y'all. I'll be back tomorrow. And if you could, retweet, follow me on YouTube if you don't already. See ya.